If there's one thing that I've learned while traveling to supposedly haunted places, is that sometimes the scariest part of any location isn't the ghosts or other paranormal entities said to be haunting it, but instead the natural surroundings. While filming an episode in the Whaley House in San Diego, I remember thinking how lucky we were to be filming a beautiful sunny day in what was supposed to be one of America's most haunted houses. The bright skies and warm weather just kind of put me at ease. But not all locations are so accommodating. In fact, some places have almost the opposite effect, and today I'm excited to tell you about one such place, the Forest of Whispers here in my home state of Oregon. It's said to be one of the most haunted forests in the entire country. And I think the reason why might become clear by the end of this video. I recently made a video about the history of the nearby town of Brownsville, Oregon, which you can check out right here. But for now, let's talk about the history of the forest itself. This area of Oregon's Willamette Valley was originally inhabited by the Kalapuya people for hundreds of years prior to the arrival of European settlers in the 1840s. There isn't much known about their culture, other than they were a peaceful tribe who lived off the land and were known for their large winter villages, which could house up to 1,000 people. Their way of life, however, would soon be under attack. Starting in the 1820s, American and British fur traders began pouring into the area, hunting beaver and other animals, and causing general chaos for the Native Americans who had lived there for so long. In 1855, the U.S. government forced the Kalapuya and many other tribes in the region onto reservations in what is today eastern Oregon. The tribal lands were then opened to settlement and farming, and the tribes were never allowed to return. A tragic and sad reality of life in the United States during its westward expansion. Prior to this, the vast majority of the land in the valley was covered in thick forests of Douglas fir trees. But over the years, these old-growth forests were logged and replaced with farmland. Today, very little of the original forest remains, most of it having been converted to pastures or plowed under to plant crops. What hasn't been disturbed, however, is this small section of land near Brownsville. Known locally as the Whispering Grove, it covers around 35 acres and is one of the last remaining old-growth forests in the valley. It's also considered to be one of the most haunted places in Oregon. According to local law, the spirits of the Native Americans who once thrived in these woods refuse to leave their ancestral lands, especially those who were murdered or died of disease during their forced relocation to the reservations in the 1850s. Some say their spirits linger here still, whispering through the trees and shaking the branches to warn passers-by of the tragedy that occurred here. Others claim that the spirits are more active at night, when the forest becomes a dark and scary place full of strange sounds and eerie mist. After hearing this, I couldn't help but wonder if this forest really was haunted, and if so, just how dangerous was it? One way to find out would be to spend a night here. So armed with nothing but a flashlight and my trusty camera crew, I headed out into the woods to see what I could find. When we arrived, it was already getting dark and the sky was filled with ominous clouds, which I suppose is fitting for a haunted forest. As we made our way deeper into the woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every time I turned around, it seemed like the trees were just staring at me. It felt like the further we went, the darker it got, even though the sky above us was still fairly light. And the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the chirping of crickets. And every once in a while, we could hear what sounded like a woman screaming in the distance. There were also plenty of creepy branches around that looked like they were reaching out to grab us as we walked by. And as the sky grew darker, the forest became more and more foreboding. After a while, we came across this clearing, which contained an old log cabin. According to local legend, this cabin was once home to a family of pioneers who settled in the area in the 1850s. They lived here peacefully for many years until one day their cabin mysteriously burned to the ground. Some say the pioneers were burned alive inside their home, their souls trapped in the forest forever. Others say they sold their souls to the devil in exchange for wealth and power. Either way, their presence is said to be felt here in the forest to this day. As we approached the cabin, I could have sworn I heard the sound of footsteps inside. But when we looked around, we found no one. We checked inside the burned-out walls and saw no sign of human life. It was at this point that I realized that we might have been out in the forest for longer than we expected, and that we should probably head back to the car. So, we turned around and started walking back the way we had come. It was at this point that things really took a turn for the worst. The forest, which had already been creepy and foreboding, now seemed genuinely terrifying. The shadows were long and distorted, and the wind had picked up, making the trees sway and bend in ways that they hadn't before. The path that had seemed relatively clear before now seemed to be littered with obstacles, fallen branches and thick undergrowth that grabbed at our clothes. And the light from our flashlights did little to penetrate the thick darkness of the woods. At one point, I thought I heard a voice calling my name. I stopped and listened, but when I turned around, there was no one there. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel my blood rushing in my ears. I tried to convince myself that it was just my imagination, but the fear that had been building inside me suddenly seemed justified. I quickened my pace, and we hurried to get out of the forest as fast as we could. As we finally emerged from the trees, I could see the headlights of cars on the nearby road, and I let out a sigh of relief. We had made it. But as I turned back to look at the forest, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It was as if the trees themselves were reaching out to grab me and pull me back inside. Once we were safely away from the forest, I took a moment to catch my breath and calm down. It had been a close call, but we had made it out okay. As I told the story to my cameraman, I couldn't help but laugh at how scared I had been. And yet, despite the danger that we had faced, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. We had explored one of the most haunted places in Oregon and survived to tell the tale. As we drove home, I thought about the history of the forest and the people who had lived there so long ago. It was hard to imagine that this peaceful-looking place could be so deadly. But I knew that the spirits of the past still lingered here. And I couldn't help but wonder if we had made them angry by trespassing on their land. The next day, I did some research and found out that we weren't the first people to have a bad experience in the forest. There had been other campers who had been attacked by unseen forces, hikers who had gotten lost and never found, and even a local police officer who had been injured while responding to a call in the forest. All of this led me to believe that the stories of the Whispering Grove really might be true. So I have to ask you, do you believe in ghosts? Have you ever seen one? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my others about haunted places in Oregon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.